I've had to learn how to be more reflexive in how I think about myself and to not think that every thought in my head is the truth, because 50% of them is just a bunch of lies and nonsense. If I did not have to use social media, I wouldn't be using social media. Keep track of the good things that you do in life. Keeping track of that kind of stuff will help keep your self-esteem up, and it'll also help you remember that, yes, I do make a difference. I do matter. I've talked to LeVar Burton. That was insane. It was great to talk to him and tell him about how not only did I, of course, watch him on Reading Rainbow, but I watched him with my dad on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Not every black girl goes to brunch and have mimosas. Some black women are awkward. Some black women are nerds. There's too much that is said about how a white man treats this black woman like a queen. That's his black queen, and he's a white chocolate king, and all this cringy stuff.
Welcome, friends, family, and fighters of all ages. This is round 2 of Season Fighters, a show where we step into the ring with champions of social change so we can learn the art of fighting back. And in the blue corner, we have a journalist and the creator of Just Add Color, a writer with 15 years of blogging and journalism experience. Under her belt, she's been published in Entertainment Weekly, Netflix, Ebony, and the Huffington Post, just to name a few. She's also a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic and a news editor for Shadow and Act and Blavity. Please welcome our next fighter, Monique Jones. Monique, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Awesome. Well,
how's it going with you?
I mean, it has been a wild news week, let alone 2025. So I'm so excited to have you on because I know that you have such great insight into both the way that we talk about politics and the way that we portray politics in our media. So before we jump into all the gritty details, let's go ahead and start with chapter 1. Can you tell us about your origin story? How did you get into writing? What was it like honing your skills for over a decade? And who or what inspired you?
Well, so I actually started out life as an artist. I've drawn since I was like 4 or 5, and I wanted to be a Disney animator when I was growing up. So yeah. So and I would make my own comic books and stuff. Like I would make since I'm a huge Dragon Ball Z fan, I would make like my own Dragon Ball Z comics and stuff like that. And so I went to a fine arts school here in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm from Birmingham. That's one of the unique things about me in this space of talking about representation is that I live in like one of the epicenters of the civil rights movement. So like I've grown up with all this since childhood, going to the Civil Rights Museum and seeing the 16th Street Baptist Church, and just seeing it as, just a church, like forgetting that it has all this history. And then you stop it and think about it, it's like, oh wow, stuff actually happened here. So like, all through downtown is there's like markers that show like what marches and what things happened on certain streets. So like, I've grown up with all that my whole life. But I went to a fine arts school that's downtown, the Alabama School of Fine Arts, which is its own kettle of fish. That's a whole other story we could have a whole other show about. But the good stuff is that I learned about art. I also learned, like, the bad stuff is that I learned that there's like a whole set of like hierarchy, like a whole hierarchical thought about like what is good art and what is bad art. And that's its own thing. And that made me really upset because cartooning wasn't seen as high art at that time. The teachers now, well, one teacher in particular is now like, I never said that, but he totally said that because I remember it. But anyway, long story short, I decided maybe since there seems to be like, we weren't shown like a great pathway to making money with art. And like the pathway that I was thinking of doing, going to the cartooning route, the animating route, I no longer felt like wanting to do that because I didn't feel like going through more brutal stuff at another art school. Like, um, even though ASFA is great, at the time that I went there, some stuff wasn't great with how they taught how to critique and how to like expand your artistic mind. And that just kind of turned me off. And I was like, if I have to go through that again, then I don't feel like doing that. So what am I going to do now? And so I thought I was going to go to the University of Alabama at Birmingham, UAB. I thought I was going to go there and have a degree in pre-health sciences, and that was going to be my job. I was going to uh, make money soundly doing stuff in pre-health sciences and um, research and stuff like that. But of course, once I got there, I had to remember that I'm not great at math, and that's one of the prerequisites to getting into the the health side of UAB is being good at math. So it's like, well, now what? Um, and then I just remembered in middle school, I did this Black History project about the Watsons go to Birmingham 1963, and I turned it into a newspaper. And so I remember just like copying how stuff was written in the news. And I was like, well, if I did it then, maybe I could do that now. And it was kind of fun to do that. And so I just decided, I don't know what led me to do this, but I just decided to sign up for the school newspaper, the Kaleidoscope, and turn in some samples. And I literally was just basing how I was writing off of what I saw in the Birmingham news. And I was good enough that I got a job there. And so then I was like, let me just switch into journalism because I actually like doing this. And so I learned about the actual techniques of the inverted triangle and all that stuff. The inverted pyramid, I mean, of um journalism writing and uh AP style and all that stuff. And I was also able to get over some of my introversion and shyness of talking to people because I had to go out and interview people at, as staff of the Kaleidoscope. And so I had to like get past that. Like there were times when if my mom had to drop me off somewhere, she would literally have to be like, "You need to get out of the car and go talk to the person." Like that's how scared I was to talk to people. But eventually, I got over that, and now I talk to celebrities and stuff on a semi regular basis. And now it's to the point where I'm just like, oh, I'm just talking to so and so today. Let me to think about what I'm gonna get for lunch later. And like I don't even like care. Um so I guess that's the long story of how I got to where I am now. Um I mean I had like people that I admired in journalism like Connie Chung and a lot of the uh great, you know, women of color who have been a part of making things better for us. Tamron Hall. Um and so I just kind of wanted to like model myself after them, and like even someone as uh seemingly someone that you might not think that would have inspired me is someone like Walter Cronkite because he just like told the news. He gave both sides, like an actual both sides, and not this kind of like performative stuff that's happening nowadays, and just like let you figure out your own conclusions. And journalism seemed pure then, just like we're sticking to the rules of being unbiased, and here's the news. And so that's what um inspires me, and that's what I try to emulate. And I also try to like put in a little like Mr. Rogers in there too, because like he was a huge inspiration to me as well. Um, as far as how to be empathetic and be kind and how to spread that to other people. So, um, yeah, that's the story.
And I'm actually really glad that you had mentioned that you have this background in uh, traditional media and journalism And I mean, especially as millennials, we sort of have this really interesting arc where we grew up idolizing and seeing what journalism is like, and there are options to go to school for journalism or for art. And then social media comes and it really rewrites a lot of the rules while while we're in college or while we're like on our way there. And so, you know, a lot of us are building platforms while we're learning about one thing, and we end up growing this sort of two-headed uh level of skills, and our process is sort of a mix of like content creation but stuff that you learn at school. So for you, I'm sure that you've like really honed in your process. Generally speaking, like what is that start to finish process like how do you select the media that you want to review? How do you approach the actual consuming of it? Like, is it like, all right, blinders, no one talks to me, I need to like zone in, I need to have like this snack and this thing around me, like, and then what does the actual writing process look like for you?
Well, let's see. Like for just that color, if I'm writing about um if I'm writing about like the latest movie or latest TV show, I probably would have seen. Well, first I have to decide if it's going to be a review or if it's going to be like an op-ed piece kind of thing. And so if it's a review, then I will watch the movie or the TV show at least like the first 1 to 3 episodes of the TV show, um, because I also have to like carve time in between like my other jobs and things that I'm doing. So it's like I have to watch as much of this as I can to get a feel for what the show is. And so once I get that, then I like kind of sit for I guess like half a day or a day like thinking about it. And like as I'm thinking about it, I'm putting it together in my mind. So a lot of the writing actually starts in my mind first. And I guess maybe some of that is like maybe that's like my art background coming out a little bit because I would also think of my compositions in my mind first. So I'm basically writing it in my head first. And then once I feel like I've gotten it all down, then I will type it out. Um, I will, of course, go back and edit and see if anything needs to be like changed or rearranged or anything. And then it's just the process of finding images and video if necessary, and um all the tedious stuff like SEO and that kind of stuff. And then I put it out. Sometimes there are pieces that are really big in terms of like there's a lot of stuff that I want to tackle at one time, and I don't want to make it so overwhelming that people won't read it, but I also feel like everything is connected. So like one good example is uh a recent article I wrote about the whole Target boycott and all the moving parts that I found that was going on with the Target boycott, from people being mad at what Tabitha Brown had said to people being upset with Target, rolling back the DEI promises they had made, and how how products by companies run by people of color are promoted versus other companies, white companies that are just their products just get to be products, whereas our products are always like special. Here's this section for this product type of thing. And and I guess since I also watch a lot of HGTV, like I even like noticed how Magnolia, is it called Magnolia? You might have to cut this out, but um, this brand by Joanna Gaines um is huge in Target, but she is a person of color, but she is able to like code switch or seen in like a white passing lens when it's like why how does that work? And so she gets to be, in this white passing way, whereas other people of color are relegated to the people of color aisle almost. And so uh there was so much that I was trying to get into that, as well as like the history of how boycotts are successful and why we shouldn't act like they aren't successful. Um so all of that to say is that there was a lot of stuff that I was seeing on social media that was all around the same topic, and I wanted to make a huge explainer about what is going on and how we should approach this and the various arguments for and against it. And so I basically had to just write it in parts, figure out which parts I wanted to keep and which parts I wanted to get rid of, um, and then put it all together and see if it flowed. And then put it out like that. It was a kind of a puzzle to, like, get it all situated, but, with bigger pieces like that, I do write them in big chunks and, put them together as I'm writing it.
I'm glad that you're mentioning that point about Target because, a lot of writers, I mean, it's no knock on them. A lot of writers will just write about things that they like about their interests. But I think being a writer and an activist and being able to infuse commentary on what's happening in the world, what's happening in politics, within history, doing that within your writing is a very valuable skill. And maybe it's like the millennial boomer in me, but I'm like, this is a dying skill, but like it takes years to really craft like writing where it's seamless and seemingly seamless. Because it takes a lot of work, to to talk about these things. And so, if you could advise young activists and writers who want to get in this space where they're like, I want to create art, I want to create stuff, but I want it to be meaningful and I want it to make a positive change in the world. What shortcuts or tips could you share? What mistakes have you made or positive lessons that you've learned that you think that you can impart to other younger folks who are starting off where you were maybe 15 years ago?
Well, I think first, um, and this is something I'm learning now actually, is like, know yourself very well. Um, and like know who you are and what you bring to the table and have the mental muscle, I guess, to recognize your worth when it comes to what you want to say and its value. I think for a long time, I had struggled with self esteem. Um, and, thankfully, being in therapy has helped me unravel a lot of that. And I'm still working on it, on all of that. And, um, and I would notice how a lot of those self-esteem issues would be involved in how I show up online and how I thought about myself as a business owner and a journalist and someone with something to say. Because uh, comparison is such a big deal when it comes to being on social media. And comparison is something that I still struggle with. Um, I will literally think, "Oh, no one wants to hear what I have to say. I don't have as many followers as X person." And, and it's only, like, taken me, I guess, until recently to be like, someone could be looking at me being like, "Oh, I don't have as many followers as them." And just because I don't have, like, 10,000 or so followers, it doesn't mean that someone isn't looking at me being like, "Oh, I wish I had that many followers." Um So, I've had to learn how to be more reflexive in how I think about myself and to not think that every thought in my head is the truth, because 50% of them is just a bunch of lies and nonsense. And, so learning how to, like, stop and analyze those thoughts that come into my head and ask, "How true is this? Is this just a narrative that's cropping up?" has been really valuable. Um, I think it's also important for people to know that they can be themselves, and I think it's really hard to feel that freedom to be yourself, because I feel like something that goes unsaid on social media, like we talk about, like one thing that people talk about a lot, which is important, is that there's a lot of fakery on social media, and that there's a lot of, you know, I think that's usually talked about with like beauty standards, but there's a lot of fakery in just how people present themselves, even in this kind of representation space of talking about uh pop culture and stuff. Like I feel like there are a lot of people who say the right thing and kind of act like they're doing the right thing, but then offline they could care less because it's just popular. It's just a trend to do that. Um and seeing how some people use activism and use talking about representation and I'm woke and all this stuff being a as being a trend, and like a way to be popular and a way to get uh X amount of followers, it's frustrating to me because it's like, and maybe this is me sounding pompous, but like I know for some things that I see online, I'm just like, these are basic ideas. Like how is some how is someone getting like 2,000 likes off of you shouldn't be racist? Like, yeah, of course you shouldn't be racist, but it's like, how is that happening when I like have this whole thing over here about here's how uh the origins of blackface and how that turned into this way of looking at black people and this way of looking at black people, and it's like, how is this information, like I just get kind of like, I guess that's like the boomer part that you're talking about that's coming in, and where it's like, how is that kind of like, not saying that it's like looked down upon, but like how's that not as popular as someone putting out something that is a basic statement, or even something that's just a random statement? Like I see people online putting out random, just like, I had a grilled cheese for lunch, and then somehow that gets like 1,000 followers and like 1,000 likes, and people being like, "Oh yeah, I totally had grilled cheese too." It's like, who cares if you had a grilled cheese? Um, but I don't know. I don't know if that any of that sounds ugly or anything, but like that's just like the jaded part, and like if could tell people who are trying to get into this, make sure that you do know who you are and that you do understand what you bring and that you don't compare, because doing this can make you be jaded. And it's partly because of what, you know, the licks that you get from being in any industry. You get jaded about some parts, but it's also just the annoyance of social media as a concept. Like, if I did not have to use social media, I wouldn't be using social media. And um I just have big gripes about how social media has like changed how we interact with each other. And that's something that, I feel like can work against me and other people like me who feel like, how do I connect and use social media to my advantage when there's so much that goes against how I act in real life? Um And I guess that goes to another thing, like, don't be fake. Like, if you cannot be fake, that I feel like that could change how social media is as a a product, a service, if people weren't fake. And that's what kind of grinds my gears the most, is the fakeness and the disingenuous feeling of social media.
Yeah, I mean, I I it's so weird because, I'm in the space of marketing social media, but I also so heavily resonate with what you said about, if I didn't have to use social media, I wouldn't. Um, you know, especially come from the age of Zangas and where you're blogging for two people or yourself, really. Um, like it's so surreal writing and having to play the game of everybody's watching, I have to perform. And so much of social media, like you said, um, really is about conforming to certain templates, conforming to certain trends. And for a lot of people who are chasing the virality and chasing the growth solely, um, they can so easily get lost in that. And you see people who chase those trends, and then 5 years later, like they're just there's no consistency, and they might have had like a huge ascendance in their following in their platform. Um, but who they are is just whatever the new trend is, whatever if Mr. Beast is telling them that they need to make this kind of content, they'll make that kind of content. As opposed to
Mhm.
staying true with what it is that you actually believe in, whether or not people are watching or not. Because I think as creators, like what you create, it sort of has this reciprocal relationship where what you create will start to reshape you. And if you don't get that relationship in check, like as a creative, I feel like you will be very unhealthy and you won't be true to what makes you happy ultimately. And I,
Mhm.
I'm like I said, I'm honestly like loving everything that you were talking about. Like it's so I feel seen as a writer, but like again, I could I honestly will invite you back on to talk about this more in depth. But I want to talk about the fact that you're 15 years plus into your writing career. You have honed in and you were perfecting your process. As creators, we've never perfected it, we're always perfecting it. um so you've learned to harness that balance between the creative and then the business and then the content and then the SEO. For you, what are the what have been the highest of highs throughout this whole experience? Moments that
Mhm.
you feel like, damn, like I love what I do, or like, oh my God, like I just did that. Versus what are some of the lowest of lows where you're like, this is something that people don't want to talk about, but this is the reality of what I do.
Mhm. Well, thankfully, I get to talk about the highs of highs, so that I'm not. I hope I haven't like deterred anyone away from doing this. But like it is great to be able to put your work out there and your voice out there because, um, I remember growing up, I would just think I want to help people. I did not know how I would do that, but I just knew I wanted to help people, and and I guess something else that is like part of my background is like when I was in second grade, um, me and my friend, I don't know if she would want me to say her name, but she is a Vietnamese. I think she's like first generation um girl. We were both in class together. We were both friends, and the teacher we were going out for like Spirit Day. And the teacher was giving all the other kids sunscreen except for us. And so I was like, "What? Why are you not giving us sunscreen?" Like I went up to her and I was like, "Give us some sunscreen. Why are you not giving us sunscreen?" And I forgot what her answer was, but I was like, "We need sunscreen too." And then when she was trying to give it to us, I was like, "I don't want it because you didn't give it to us in the first place." And so that kind of like I guess bent towards activism as even a young kid. Like for me, I guess it's just like speaking out when I feel like I need to. Like when there's like an urge to speak out against something that is not right, then I need to. And otherwise she was a great teacher. But and she talked about that for years and years to come. Like whenever my mom, because I had other siblings that went to the same school, and like she would tell my mom when Monique needs to say something, she sure will say it. And um, so uh, there's that. But like I feel like the highest thing that's great about having your own website is that you can put out your life story. You can put out what you feel about the world. You can like tangibly change it by someone reading what you have to say and taking away what you have to say and thinking about it. Um, I've gotten like one comment in particular I've gotten before was I was talking about, I think this was at like the height of COVID, and I was talking about um the anti-Asian stuff that was going around and how to combat that, and talk about it. And like one woman commented back when Twitter was Twitter. She messaged me saying, "I read this and I love what you had to say. I have a white boyfriend who um didn't stick up for me during this incident that we had out in public, and I was so mad about it, and I was basically able to talk to him about it because of what I had written, and now he's going to do better." And so I was like, wow, I can have that kind of impact on somebody. Uh, so yeah, you can change people's lives. And I think it's important for me to remember that all the time. And I think for someone getting into this, it's important to document those kind of wins too, because if you're someone who is like me and you're kind of on the depressive side of things and you don't like keep track of the good things that you do in life, keeping track of that kind of stuff will help keep your self-esteem up, and it'll also help you remember that yes, I do make a difference, I do matter. um I don't have to worry about if am mattering in life, because I do. um and you matter in life just because you're alive, but um you also matter because of what you can bring to other people's lives as well. um I think in terms of interviewing, I mean, I've talked to LeVar Burton, and that was insane. Yeah. And it especially came at a very sensitive time, because I think it's like a couple of weeks to a month or so after my dad had unexpectedly passed away. And it was really, it was great to talk to him and tell him about how not only did I, of course, watch him on Reading Rainbow, but I watched him with my dad on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and he was very gracious. And I think the the PR rep afterwards was like, he really loved this interview. I was like, oh, I'm so glad because um, I didn't want to come across as too mushy or too much like you're like my dad and stuff like that. But yeah, I was glad that he could like feel how much he impacted my life and how much this meant to me to talk to him. And I think from what the agent said, I think that it impacted him as well. So I'm really excited that I was able to talk to like my one of my biggest childhood idols, and still adult idol. Um and I think the other interviews that I've really liked, I talked to Michael Ealy, who for a long time I just loved, and like I talked to him when Almost Human. I don't know if you saw that show on Fox several years ago. It was a sci-fi show. And he was playing an android, and I liked it, but I could see it was not gonna get another season. But we commiserated over that, and he was like, "This was my favorite role." Um, and so talking to him about that was cool. And another kind of a throwback, the Real Adventures of Johnny Quest back in like the 90s. I talked to the voice actor for the first season. It's specific, but it has to be the first season of um Haji on the Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, and he talked about what it's like being a person of color in the voice acting industry, and how he tried to bring like his own experiences and um stuff that is relatable into the character. And I really appreciated that too, because um Haji was always one of my favorite characters in any iteration of Johnny Quest. So um those are some of the big ones. Lowest lows, well, you know, the comparison stuff is definitely frustrating. But I think my lowest low, if I'm gonna be really vulnerable and honest, is um sometimes not sometimes letting the bad thoughts win, especially when someone else is telling you those thoughts. And when someone else is telling you that stuff, it makes it feel like it's valid. And this is mostly just coming from the fact that I work at a, a newspaper that's in town. That's the it's like it's an historic black newspaper. Which if you're watching this and you're from here, then you probably know which one I'm talking about. Um, but the new one of the new management people in management over there, he was my managing editor. He was verbally abusive, terrible, terrible, terrible to work with. Everyone under him would leave, including me and this other girl who is my friend. We left, and but before any of that, like he was just awful to me specifically, and I think because in some way he was threatened by all of us. I feel like, and I don't know why. And so he would like the last one of the last things that he told me was that I was the worst person that he had ever worked with.
What?
And um and what was scary was that at the time I had gotten so like used to being verbally beat down, and I was also just under so much pressure to like make the job work because um it just seemed like so much was riding on this job for some reason that I was just like, you know what, it's cool. And um of course I was like sad, but I was just like, you know what, whatever. And this was like a year into the job. And so then I told my parents about it, and I guess being an adult, maybe it's not cool for your parents to come in and like talk to your boss, but like still I was glad that they did because I at that point I was tired of standing up for myself, and I had been standing up for myself for so long that I was just, beat down at this point. And one thing my dad said that it just really still haunts me today is since he grew up in an abusive household, he said, I know what it looks like when someone is being abused. And that's how my daughter looks right now. And so they basically laid into him being like, you need to treat her with respect and, all this stuff. And but he didn't forget that. And so uh one time, like the last time I spoke to him over the phone, because he would like mess with my off days too. Like you could never really have a free day from him at all. And so he was like getting on me about this is not on the website yet. That's another thing. They're giving me too many jobs, and I only applied for one specific job, which was social media manager. But then I became a full time writer as well. And so it's just like, okay. And putting everything on the website as well. And this is a very small paper. But since I could do all that stuff, they're like, well, here, do it all. And I even put up ads sometimes, which is not even my job. But anyway, he called me on the phone saying, why is this not like this? Why is that not like that? And I'm like, okay, I'll get to it. And then he like launched into this whole thing about um I don't understand why your parents had to come in and all that stuff. And then I was like, okay, when we're talking about my parents, I quit. I was like, okay, I quit. And I just laid into him. And like, I don't think he knew I had that kind of a temper, but I was just like, you don't own me. You don't own anyone in this company. You don't take my talents as your own and act like you taught me how to do this stuff. I came here knowing how to do this and all this stuff. Like um, and you're too old to be acting like this and all the anything you could think. I was like, I quit. Like I'll put in 2 weeks, but I quit. And I didn't talk to him at all for the 2 weeks. And the higher boss up higher than him, he was very nice. But he was like, please, how can we make this work so you can stay? And I was like, I'm not staying. I've already burned my bridge here anyway, so I'm not staying. And so it was terrible. It was terrible. And so I think the thing that I hate the most is that you come away from anything like that with scars. And for me, especially with my dad's history in an abusive household, I vowed to myself, like, I'm never gonna be in an abusive situation. And then I felt like, wow, I was in an abusive situation. It wasn't a relationship, but it was, kind of like one in a work relationship. It's like, oh, so I'm still like, I feel like there's like more I could unpack about that, but like, if you feel yourself in that situation, get out of it as soon as possible. I didn't at first because I was like, maybe this is not that bad. Like, even going into the interview, I was like, something feels weird. But I was like, maybe it's just me not, you know, maybe I'm just like too much of a hermit. I don't understand people anymore. So I made excuses, but like, don't make excuses for bad behavior, and uh, don't beat yourself up about getting it in those situations too, because I've done that for too long, I feel like. What is more helpful is compassion, because you you don't know when those situations are gonna happen, and, um, it's not your fault that they happened. So I feel like I needed to hear that as well, that it's not my fault that it happened.
I mean, like, just on that subject of being in an abusive relationship at work is huge because, I mean, I know I speak for other creatives and workers in general who, you end up in a company and it's almost like you're in a cult. Like there is this hierarchy and system, and there are these figureheads who see themselves as gods, even though they're like middle managers. Um,
Mhm,
and the things that people think that they can get away with saying, it's like you said that out in just the wild, and you would get demolished by just a random passerby. Like you just can't. It's unfathomable how so many employers, or even just, like I said, middle managers will think that they can talk that way. Um, but I am so glad that you had mentioned, the importance of walking away, because oftentimes, there's some jobs that it is just not worth. It is not worth a paycheck. Like if there is a way to, live with family, to step away from that situation, sometimes it's way better than just, getting what you can get. Wow. Um, Now, staying on that subject of work, um, you know, I, I'm really curious to know what is on your radar. You come across all different types of movies, TV shows, and celebrities. Um, what are some of the, this is sort of a two-part question. What are the unappreciated artists that you feel like, man, this person is like not getting enough play, and I feel like they are way better than people are yeah, giving them credit for. And this could be past or present, because I know that you have a really great um, encyclopedia of knowledge of artists throughout time, which I really love. And then contrast that out with, what are some spaces where you feel like this is some bad stuff? This is like propaganda. These are really nasty corners of media that you think should get more eyeballs.
Well, I feel like, I guess I'll answer the last part first, because I've been thinking about any underrated actors or like shows or movies, and I know there are some, but it's just like, with that kind of question, it's like, oh, how do I choose? But like, um I do know one thing, that something that I think that people don't think a lot about, and something that I'm trying to figure out how to write better about, is that not all stereotypes are negative. Some are, positive stereotypes, but they're still annoying. They might not be uh harmful, so to speak, but they're just still kind of like, that's not how everyone acts. And like, one example that I definitely have is, to call out Issa Rae a little bit, is um uh to take her Insecure versus Awkward Black Girl, which she made before she got famous. And Awkward Black Girl to me was a lot closer to how I feel. Because I'm not, I think like how people think about black girls and black women in TV and film is like um we have to talk sassy. Um I don't know how to do that. We have to um be like I don't know. I see you. Okay, girl. Like I don't you hear how not accurate that sounds for me to say out of my mouth. Like um I not everyone talks like that, and not every black girl goes to brunch and have mimosas. Like the whole brunch culture, especially in Atlanta, it's just like not everyone does that. It's just like there's lots of things that not every black woman does, including with relationships. Like I'm someone who um I'm celibate not because of religion or anything, but because I feel like I would to be someone who's sexually active would mean that I'm taking in a lot of people's auras that I don't want to have. And I don't feel like fleshing all that out. Like it feels like you would be taking in someone's not spirit, but just like you are leaving something behind in somebody. And not not literally, but like you are leaving like your spiritual essence behind, like whether that's good or bad. And I don't want to have to continuously like flesh myself out of people's nonsense. Um, if I'm just fooling around, um, and it's not serious. So I just kind of like I just don't do that, and so I don't think there's like representation at all about that side of being a woman. Like it's generally thought of that if you're a feminist, then you have to be sexually active, like have as many partners as you want. And like that's great for some people. Some people are like that. Some people need that. Um how their psyche is set up, that's fine for them. But for some people it's not. And like I don't know if some people would be like, well, are you demisexual? Are you whatever? I don't know. But um I all I know is that there should be more representation of people, men and women, who feel like I have boundaries around what kind of energies I'm letting into my life. And if that means not having sex with somebody until I get to know that person very well, or we're in a relationship, or we're on track for something, then so be it. And I feel like there needs to be more focus on that, because that's a valid way of living. And I think the whole like eons long thing of making fun of people who are virgins and oh you're a virgin and you haven't done this, and it's like who actually cares if I've done that? How does it affect you if I've done that? So and how does it make me cooler to have done that? Um and so yeah, I feel like um to go back to Issa Rae, I feel like that Awkward Black Girl was more along those lines of showing that black women, some black women are awkward. Some black women, um, I don't know. I guess you could even say are nerds. Some are not the typical, you know, black woman that you see on TV. And I feel like when she went to do Insecure, maybe that was also coming from a rooted place in her experience, but I was kind of felt kind of let down because I was like, oh, the one opportunity that there could have been to bring an awkward black girl to a bigger audience, and now it's just kind of a standard story. And I know that everyone has celebrated it for what it is, and I'm glad for its success, but having seen Awkward Black Girl before and knowing her who she was then, I was like, oh, what a missed opportunity. Um, now where our Awkward Black Girl is gonna find representation? Because no one's really doing it. No one's ever done it on mainstream, and so that's one area. I think that hmm, this is gonna get some people, but I also think that um there's a lot to be said for how interracial relationships are shown on TV and in film. I think there needs to be a better job. Um, First, I think there needs to be more than just white and black interracial couples, um, because that's not the only type. And when there are other types of interracial couples, I think it should be shown. At first, I think it should be shown more, but um, that we get to see that there's not like this like fetishist aspect, because maybe I'm bringing social media into this, but like I've always found that when talking about interracial couples on social media and looking into the communities on social media, there's always like a pocket of people that's always talking about interracial couples in a very basic, dumb, where they're just like, watch my whatever race of the person boyfriend do my black hair, braid my black hair, or eat soul food. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, how are we fetishizing both people at the same time? Of they haven't done this, so let me show them this, and um, I'm black. They haven't done anything with a black girl. Ooh, and it's just like, what? Why can't we just show them as human beings, with all the problems and all the good sides, and show them as people? And so we can get out of this like e- era of, we're still at like a taboo era of talking about interracial couples, and that's kind of frustrating. And it even goes into, oh, sorry, uh, I thought you were talking to him, but or her, um, but it even goes into talking about um dare I say, the whole Nicolandria thing that's going on with Love Island. I haven't seen the show, but I think maybe they're a bad example, but I do feel like there's also just this element of when it's a white man and a black woman, that there's very much the soft life stereotype, that a white man will treat you better than any other man. And that's not true. Like, there's great men, there's also trash men, just like there's great women and trash, um, maybe not, well, yeah, trash women, I guess. That they're bad. There's great men, there's bad men, there's great women, there's bad women. But there are there's too much that is said about how a white man treats this black woman like a queen. That's his black queen, and he's a a white chocolate king, and all this cringy stuff. Um, and it's just it just frustrates me. So I feel like that those are areas that could be much better. I feel like as far as things that are underrated, hmm, I've seen so much. What's underrated?
Or it could even be spaces where you feel like there's a lot of creative momentum that you feel like, this is a space where I'm seeing a lot of talent, or this is where a lot of my attention is sort of moving to because I see a lot.
Well, I'll say this. I feel like web series, I guess talking about how Issa Rae had a web series, I feel like web series are underrated. And I think sometimes even I'm guilty of that, of like, um not like I used to push a lot of web series years ago, and I kind of fell off of that. I think partly because of work and partly because of just trying to keep up with everything that's just beginning to be too much to keep up with. But I think web series is like the new frontier of where we need to go when it comes to talking about different aspects of representation and um different ways of showing people. Um I think a lot of new creators are really conscious about some of these other nuanced areas of stereotyping and things that don't get talked about a lot, and they are trying to show things in a different way. Um, I I appreciate that too because like that's where the new Hollywood is being birthed from these new creators, and it's similar with like politics. There's like a new groundswell of young politicians that want things differently, and they just need in both areas they both need the older people to get out of the way, and then the new world can uh come to fruition. So I really hope that these new creators keep going, and I think that just like Issa Rae, they will find their place in Hollywood, and my hope is that they remember what they came in wanting to do, and that while you can go mainstream, I don't want them to just become part of the machine, if you know what I mean. Like keep that kind of like grassroots feeling while having mainstream access. Um and I think as far as like one movie that I think actually several movies that I don't think got a lot of attention. These are actually like all British movies, but they all have representation involved in the story. Um I do like when stories have a lot of representation, but you don't. It's not really like a big selling point of the movie, so to speak. It's just part of the movie. Um, uh, Mr. Malcolm's List, um, is like set in like the Jane Austen type period, of England, and it has a full multicultural cast, starring Frida Pinto, um, and it's just a fun movie that allows people like me who do like period dramas and stuff to feel like, oh, I'm part of the story finally. Like I'm not just looking at um what we're used to looking at when it comes to films and TV shows like that. Um I think it's also a great uh departure from Bridgerton in the way that it feels like it's set more in a realistic time rather than a fantasy of Regency England. Um, let's see the other one, The Green Knight, which has Dev Patel
Hmm.
as the star.
I love it.
Um, I Yeah, me too. I know that one's like probably divisive with some people, but like I really like it because it really I think it got across the feeling of like how at least how I feel about that kind of like Middle Ages creepy time of Britain, and how it does feel like a nightmare fantasy story. Like it's I really like it. And he was also in I keep forgetting the name of this movie. I want to say it. The Personal History of David Copperfield. Um, that's another Death Patel movie, and it's a Charles Dickens story, I think. Um, but it's starring Dev Patel. It's also got a multicultural cast, and um, I think that's fun too. I think it's um maybe a little precious for my taste a little bit, but I think it's really good. And if you're into period dramas and you want something that's, I guess you're into Bridgerton and you want something that gives you a Bridgerton feel, then those kind of things will give you that feel. Maybe The Green Knight, not so much, but that would just make you scared. But um, uh, that kind of stuff I think is really cool to me. Um, because I've done a lot of research about Britain. I was trying to write a story at one time about like 1700s yeah, Britain, and I wanted it to have multicultural characters, and I was doing a lot of research about how prevalent were people of color in Britain at that time, and it might not have been like it might not be like, New York City levels of melting pot um living, but there were people of color at that time. There were landed gentry at that time who were people of color and people doing all kinds of jobs. Um, and of course, people who were still in servitude or just servants working in a house. Like from all levels, there were people of color. And so I find that these kind of movies touch on that kind of real history in a way. And I just want people to like learn more about that too, because people of color have been around everywhere since the dawn of time, and it's narrow thinking to think that there haven't been uh, people of color in places like before 1960 or something.
Yeah, I mean, spot on about, the way that we're expected to only represent the super exceptional, and as if the super exceptional people of color are like, a dime a dozen. But it's like, I mean, you can go through any year, any country, you can find these stories everywhere. Um, and also kudos to Green Knight, which is also a movie I loved. But now I actually want to switch off and do a round of lightning reviews. So I'm just going to throw out
Okay.
some artists, movies, shows, names, and give me a quick grade, A plus to F. If you want to drop a quick, it was good, it was iconic, blah, 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 you can do that, or just give me the grade. Ready to go.
Okay. Yes.
All right. First one, the Sydney Sweeney American Eagle ad.
Boot. Terrible.
Um, Target. Not really a artist, but Target.
um, Sad to see it go, but terrible. I used to
uh,
shop there all the time, so sorry.
Sinners.
Good. Not great, but good. I know that's like it is good. I like quick story. I personally give it like an 8 out of 10, and like that's really good. Um, but at the time when the hype was, oh, Sinners, I already knew that me just saying 8 out of 10, people were gonna think, oh, you hate us, and it's like, no, I love it. I love the movie. I just don't. And cards on the table. Maybe it is because of without trying to sound pretentious. Maybe it is because maybe my background, I've since I have, kind of lived with kind of all this kind of stuff happening in the South my whole life. I already know this kind of stuff basically. And while I do like that the presence of Asian store owners and even that one shot of the tamale store, like the fact that they are at least highlighting that there are um Mexican and other Latino people who are in Mississippi at this time and the Native Americans at this time, like that is great. Like I do love that they show that the South is as multicultural as anywhere else, despite all the Jim Crow and all the racism and all that stuff. People still lived and survived. Um, but I think overall, I think it was a great movie that like is a great story about the South. And then when it became a story about the vampires, it kind of went just into good territory where it was great. Then the vampires just made it good. And so I almost like it before we got to the vampires. But the vampires are still cool too. So, you know, it's good, but you know.
You've seen the
It's
bar.
not.
You've
It's
seen the
not.
bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Um, Next one, Insecure.
You know what? It's just not for me. Um, like I've seen some of it, and I'm just like, you know what? I just don't relate. And I want to because I like Issa Rae, but you know, um, I'm glad that I forgot his real name, so I'm sorry, but I'm glad that Asian Bay had his time. But I just it's just not for me.
Um, the first Black Panther movie.
Spectacular. Um,
Great.
I feel like it's yeah, great. I feel like it's the part where Killmonger is telling people who he is in the throne room, and um, they're having this, to me, almost like Shakespearean back and forth of just like grandeur of like, who are you? How dare you? And you know, all this great acting. I feel like that's probably the closest that Marvel will get to having like a real movie. Uh, um, that's just me. Um, and I know people might be like, a real movie. All the Marvel movies are real. But I'm just saying like a movie that like gets at real emotion because I feel like there's a lot of time Marvel movies want to go for this like jokey haha, we're facing extermination but we're gonna joke our way through it because that's how humans act, um and that part never resonated to me. But I feel like Black Panther had like so much real talk going on, like talk about like real issues that are happening, that I feel like Marvel can only want to get to that level again. Um, and I don't know if they can do that. Even with the latest Captain America movie, I don't know if they fully achieved that. Um, and Winter Soldier show and all that, not the Captain America and Winter Soldier series. I don't know. I have to watch that again. But yes, spectacular Black Panther.
Awesome. So we'll put that in the A plus tier. Um, the Harry Potter reboot. Obviously, we haven't seen it, but what are we giving?
Yeah.
What are we doing now?
Um, Unfortunate. Um, because I don't envy the children that are at the center of this because um they're just trying to like get a break, and of course being in Harry Potter would be like the biggest break of all time. Um so as far as the kids are concerned, I am sad for them that they're at the center of this firestorm. Um the adults, I know everyone is looking for, a job, and I get it, but I don't know, it just seems like a lot to risk. Like you risk your reputation, especially if you're someone like Nick Frost, who has like a huge reputation for, or at least like a huge fan base that is like alt and um would probably not like J.K. Rowling, and then you kind of go against that. So it's like, what are you gonna do about your fan base and your reputation after that? I feel like it's a lot to risk getting that huge paycheck, but I guess it is worth it. But is it worth it? You know, so
Our last two, Get Out.
I think it's good. I think it could have been better if I wasn't spoiled. So, um, so I think it is good, with the caveat that if I hadn't seen it, I would be thrilled by it.
And then finally, Awkward Black Girl.
I feel like it is great and could have been greater if it was brought to the mainstream and not just as a web series. And they probably could have pushed more stories as well within that if it got the mainstream backing. So yeah, missed potential.
Now, I want to go ahead and switch back over to writing real quick and talk about something that's very relevant for a lot of writers, which is AI. What
Mm.
is your take on writing, content creation in the age of ChatGPT and AI? Do you think artists and writers should use it? How could they use it? Is it something that, I know that some people are boycotting it, some people are trying to avoid it, but there are a lot of apps where whether you use it or not, it's in there. Um,
Mhm.
what does the future look like for writers and AI?
It's a very interesting question. I feel like, I feel like the thing that I guess we just have to accept at some point is that it is, like you said, it's hard to get away with. It's hard to not use it even when you're not trying to use it, and um, on some level, we're all kind of using it, even though we might claim I don't want AI. Like if you look at Google, if you're searching on Google, then you get the Google AI search. So it's just
Mhm.
like, well, yeah, it's just baked into almost everything now. And even on Canva, there's AI, and I don't use that. Because I experimented with it once to see what kind of images it would make, and it wasn't really making anything good. So I was like, well, I don't need that anyway. Um, the one thing that I had been, um, uh, as uh, as we talked before this started, I had been in a group about social media, and one thing that was being discussed was using it for, um, like streamlining your creation process. Um, for instance, like um using it to create newsletters and things like that. And um, I I've been of two minds about all of this because um like on the one hand, for me, I know that one of my weakest areas of creation is like having to write out captions and newsletters, because I feel like I've already written the article. I don't have enough brain power to rewrite basically the same thing over again. Um, so I have like semi experimented, like trying to like let it do stuff I don't feel like doing and making sure I edit it to make sure that it's in my voice and that it's in what I want to. It's not just like some computer saying it, like it just kind of does the bare bones and I like fill in stuff. But I also feel like sometimes if I'm doing that, am I being truthful? Um because I've written out the whole article. It's important to me to write out the whole article. Um so do I just carve out more space to write out the captions and like to write it out, word for word like I had been doing? Um like is it worth the is it worth saving time if it could potentially be against my ethics? Um so I've been back and forth on that because I would like an assistant. Like that's kind of what I have been thinking about it. Like if I can use it just as an assistant, since I don't have enough money to pay for one. Because if I had a real life assistant, I would definitely have them do the tasks that I don't feel like doing. Um, but it's AI, so I don't know. But I want to be as ethical as possible, and that means making my own stuff. Um, so um, as far as like delegation stuff, I'm still figuring that out. But everything that I write online, everything that I make on Canva is made by my hands and my brain. Um, so yeah. And I think also just if you can hear any hesitancy in my voice is just like it almost feels dangerous to like say anything about AI that is in a like semi positive way, because I don't want to be seen as someone who is from the arts. I don't want to be someone who is like seen as the bad guy.
Yeah.
Um, and it's it's difficult because I guess it's like the art side of me is like this is not good, and then on the the business side, if I was just a straight up business owner, like a corporate person, I'd be like, well, we can use AI for our deliverables and like stuff like that. And so, um, I don't know. It's tough being an artist who is also trying to like be a practical business owner, and stay with the times and stay with the technology, especially something like AI where you have to think about all the ethics involved and environmental things involved and what I don't want to be a part of because I am so adamant about making sure that the planet is safe, but I can't make it safe if I'm like using AI. So it's like there's just too much to think about. And so I guess what I can say is I'm trying my best. I think everyone needs to just view their ethics and view what makes sense for them, because what makes sense for one person might not make sense for somebody else. Um, and I think everyone is just in this process of learning what AI is and how we can use it to our best ability, if there is a way to use it to our best ability. Um, Maybe the best ability is just making like meme posts and stuff, but um, it's such a complicated thing, and it's such a divisive thing. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of thinking about AI and if it's even practical, um, or makes sense with my ethics to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is the question uh, of our time for a lot of artists. How are you going to use it? Are you going to use it? How do you feel about the ethics of it? And I think a lot of us are going to ask those tough questions about, what role does it play? Can you avoid it? How do you be ethical? Um, you know, like not to say that I am envious, but it must be nice being one of those artists who just doesn't care, who just makes AI slop, and that is how you make your money. But I think that um uh again, to to hop back onto the boomer millennial thing, there's something beautiful about making something like from out of here, just like out of nothing. There's something beautiful about being able to make a goofy collage on Canva. And I think for artists, and as we see more AR art, we're going to crave the human touch of a spelling error
Mhm.
or a Canva post that, is a little wonky or whatever. Because AI art and writing definitely has its own look and flavor. And I think as writers
Mhm.
know that, like, I have tested extensively with AI, and as far as writing, that thing cannot write like I write. So,
Mhm.
so no matter if I use it or not, I always have to rework the whole damn thing anyways. Um,
Mhm.
but guys, question from the time. I actually have my last question. And this is about self-care and how that functions as a creative writer. Writing is an amazingly therapeutic, can be therapeutic and stressful, but it can be an amazingly therapeutic way to like cope and process with how we're feeling, the world that we're experiencing in these dark times. But sometimes as writers, we need to get out of our heads. We need to unwind. We need to touch grass. We need new inspiration, new ideas to stay invigorated. For 15 years, you have to find ways to continue to learn how to fight through and keep posting, keep writing, keep creating. So, how do you detach? How do you get inspired? How do you recenter yourself so you can live to fight another day?
That's a good question. I feel like sometimes I kind of forget to unplug a little bit. Um, but I do think I'm getting better at unplugging and having a time away from the computer and away from the phone. I know one thing that my sister and I do. Um, I guess I'll just quickly plug my sister, Ashley M. Jones, who is the first Black and youngest poet laureate of Alabama. So, uh, um, so we both, after we come after we come home from work or after we're finished with work, we just eat dinner together and like watch the whatever latest British murder mystery or whatever, and just like unplug that way or watch whatever's on YouTube. Usually my sister's YouTube is what we're watching. And we watch like people making lunch and like uh intricate lunches or like seeing what people have hauled from uh the clothing stores or whatever or things like that. Um I think for me, I've been learning to tap back into my drawing. I recently got um, a tablet initially specifically for drawing and learning Procreate. But I've also started like recording YouTube videos on there as well. But um, I have drawn a lot in recent months. I need to get back to doing that. I'm also trying to get back into reading because I used to be a huge reader growing up. Um, so I have several books I'm working on at the same time. And I just love cooking. Um, so I will like try to cook something really nice for myself. Um, and like one thing that I had found that I do like a lot is just cleaning my house. Um, it's a very rewarding thing at the end of the day to like have a place that feels better to be in. Um, so yeah, those are some of the things. And just talking with family. Um, I'm very close to my family, especially now after losing my dad. I'm especially uh it's like a lot of thoughts about like, making sure that you spend time with the ones that you have. Um, so I spend a lot of time with them, and that's how I keep sane. And I go to therapy, so um, so yeah, that's how I try to help myself.
Awesome. I mean, that sounds like a wonderful balance. Well, Monique, I've honestly had a blast chatting with you today. We've all learned so much, and I appreciate you stopping by Season Fighters. Again, you're always welcome back on the show. Before we head out, can you please tell the folks watching at home, what are you working on these days, and where can we find and support you?
Well, I am at justlatcoloronline.com. That's my website. That's the main hub for everything. You can find my YouTube account there as well. Which just look up just add color online. I'm pretty much everywhere on social media now at just add color online on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook and TikTok. Um, and also uh check out the book of awesome Black Americans, which I wrote uh in I think I wrote it in 2019 or so, but it came out in 2020. So right at the pandemic, a great time to promote a book. Uh the book of awesome Black Americans is out, and it gives you little known facts about uh, Black American inventors, innovators, some people that you know very well also, but just an all ages book that helps you learn more about American history from the Black perspective.
All right, everybody. That is the final bell. Thanks, Monique, for being in our corner. Again, everybody, don't forget to follow Monique all over social media, and we'll see you all for another round. Peace.